Breaking Danger, The Ghost Ops novel by Lisa Marie Rice, Chapter 1. In the air from Mount Blue in Northern California to San Francisco. Hang in there, Sophie Daniels, John Ryan thought grimly. I'm coming for you as fast as I can. Whatever you do, whatever it takes, stay alive. He'd only seen her in photographs and only knew of her through her friend Al Connolly, who had also worked at Arca Pharmaceuticals. He knew only that she was beautiful and smart, a researcher, a virologist, and now a vulnerable woman surrounded by danger. John Ryan looked down at the ravaged, smoking landscape. His stealth helicopter basically flew itself, and for the first time he regretted that. Having to pay attention to flying would have kept his mind off what he was seeing below. Death, destruction, chaos. There were so many columns of smoke. He didn't bother flying around them, but arrowed his way through. The Hello's air filters could take care of the smoke. Pity they couldn't filter out his feelings. The Hello was hermetically sealed, so he couldn't smell the smoke. But he knew what burning vehicles smelled like, and burning people. The world was dying right before his eyes. There was a tiniest spark of hope waiting for him on Beach Street, near Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco. Sophie Daniels, the scientist with the vaccine against the virus that was tearing humanity apart. The Doom Bug. John had never met her, but she was Al Connolly's best friend. Al Connolly, soon to be Al Ross. He knew that in his teammate Nick Ross's eyes, Al was already his wife. Nick had loved Al forever, and had lost her, then found her again, just before scumbags who worked for Arca Pharmaceuticals' security system tried to kill her. Arca was responsible for murdering the world. Its death throes visible right below him. But the world might survive if he got to Sophie Daniels in time. If she was still alive. If he could smuggle her out of San Francisco with an estimated 600,000 monsters roaming the streets. If they could replicate that vaccine in a lab which was even now being prepped back at Haven on Mount Blue. If the vaccine worked, a long shot, but the only one they had. Was Sophie Daniels still alive? He remembered the last email Sophie sent her friend and colleague Al. Al, I think Arca has bioengineered a virulently contagious virus that takes out the neocortex and activates the limbic system. If you're reading this, then you'll know that the virus has been unleashed. I hacked into the files and I discovered that there is a vaccine. It was in Dr. Lee's office in the Arca building, in a case which also contained the live virus. There was so much chaos that I was able to steal it, so I have a refrigerator case of 200 vials of vaccine and 4 doses of live virus. The electricity has gone out, and I don't think the coolant in the case will last much more than 96 hours. I'm in my apartment on Beach Street, and I don't dare go out. These creatures are running around in the streets. All I can do is stay locked up in the apartment and hope that someone can come for me. If you're reading this, Al, send someone. This vaccine is our only hope. Soph. They'd received that message 24 hours ago. Al had replied that John was on his way. He'd wanted to head out immediately, go grab her and the vaccine, and bring her back to safety. Their little stealth Hello could make it to San Francisco and back in a few hours easy. That had been the plan. But in this new world, no plans worked. He'd had to leave their main Hello on the rooftop of the Arca skyscraper in the financial district of San Francisco. He was flying an older Hello that had been in maintenance, and instead of heading out immediately, he'd headed out 24 hours late because the rotor head had to be replaced, and they had to go steal one in what had overnight become Badlands. 24 hours was a long time in this new world. Time enough for Sophie Daniels to be caught and ripped to pieces. Time enough for the whole fucking San Francisco to turn. Time enough for her to turn. Jesus. At least her building was intact. He could see it both from the Keyhole satellite feed and their own drones that Mac and Nick had sent to hover over the Beach Street area. To top it off, her internet connection had broken down, but his was still functioning. Haven had an almost unbreakable connection. Its servers were in an impenetrable underground bunker about a mile away, safe and impregnable. He could talk to Haven and they could listen in and connect with anyone whose connection still worked. Sophie's didn't. John had done a fast check and the entire northern section of San Francisco was down. He was flying in blind without knowing what was at the other end, knowing only that monsters were roaming the streets. Creatures seemed to be able to find healthy people and go after them with unparalleled ferocity. Did they smell the healthy? God only knew. He didn't. John was a warrior and had been trained all his adult life in the warrior arts, but as a covert operative for the CIA and then a member of the elite and secret Ghost Ops group, he'd also received extensive training in other arts: computer security, orienteering, and basic knowledge of mechanical engineering, and even medic training. He was a master liar, really good at undercover ops, but absolutely nothing in his training prepared him for this, for humanity going feral overnight. John glanced down to the left and saw two kids up a tree. Two little kids clinging to each other. And at the base of the tree, like a frothing mass of madness, 10, maybe 15 infected. According to Elle's pretty friend Sophie, with the neocortex out, the infected couldn't plan. They wouldn't be able to find a ladder to climb up to the kids, but gosh, they could pound against the trunk of the tree to loosen the kids' hold. John watched as one of the children lifted his head and stared at the hello. He couldn't see John. The cockpit was covered with a bulletproof graphene coating that tinted the windows, making everything in the cockpit completely invisible, even to thermal and IR imagery. All the kid could see was the piece of machinery working, maybe the last piece of working machinery in the world, and clearly someone uninfected was flying. The kid's mouth opened in a silent scream that didn't penetrate the insulated cockpit. He let go of the branch he was holding and waved desperately, eyes and mouth wide, face turning as John flew by. A second, two. Damn it! He slapped the instrument panel hard enough to hurt. It didn't affect the instrument panel, of course, which was made of a highly resistant epoxy resin, strong enough to survive a crash intact. All he did was hurt his hand and vent his feelings a little. He checked his radar. The hello itself was stealth and never showed up on anyone else's radar. The new system had a 100-mile radius, which served him well. He wouldn't crash into another aircraft. But there were no other aircraft on his radar. In the space of half a day, all aircraft had been grounded. It was possible there were no pilots left in California, maybe the United States. Little bird, you copy? A deep voice crackled in his ear. Mac McEnroe back at base. John tapped the earbud. Copy, sit rep. Please, he thought, give me some good news. Not good, John. Mac's deep voice was somber. All TV channels have lost regular programming. There's an announcement by Governor Spielberg ordering a curfew effective immediately. Everyone is to keep off the streets. But it's pre-recorded and on a loop. We haven't heard anything new in hours except... John's hand tightened on the stick. Except... A heavy sigh. Our drones have shown us that all interstate highways to the north and to the east have been firebombed. All bridges leading out of state bombed. Nothing's getting in or getting out. All aircraft grounded. You seeing anything? Negative, boss, he thought for a moment. So no one's coming to help? Looks that way. Our drones show us Marine and National Guard units strung out along the firebombed highways and a presence where there are no natural boundaries, but the units are facing in to California. Not to keep people out, but to keep people in, John murmured. Yeah. He gritted his teeth so hard his jaws hurt. They're abandoning us, the fuckers. Mac blew out a breath and get Elle's friend out, John. Get us that vaccine before the whole state dies. Roger that. John switched off the entire comm system. There wasn't anything else he wanted to hear. He could see what the situation was. Right beneath the hello skids on his monitor as he flew over once prosperous towns now reduced to ashes and rubble. Some people were lying dead on the streets like feral dogs, creatures, their hands claw-like reaching out, their mouths red-stained. Others were eloping like wolves through the town. Occasionally he'd see desperate, uninfected faces plastered against windows, hoping for help, pleading for help. Help wasn't coming. It looked like the country had turned its back on them.